Welcome to the Secret Resume podcast, hosted by me, Melody Moore. In this podcast, we explore the people, places and experiences that have shaped my guests, those which have influenced who they are as people and where they are in their work life today, or as I like to call it, their secret resume. Before we dive in, I want to tell you about something that I'm really excited about, which is our Being Free membership. We're developing an online community which is designed for people who are interested in personal growth. If you're navigating career transitions, maybe feeling stuck or burnt out, or simply seeking more meaning in your life, then this is for you. Membership gives you access to a range of resources, a supportive community, and monthly group coaching calls. It will allow you to explore what freedom means to you on your own terms. Head to www.liberareconsulting.co.uk/being-free to join the waitlist. Very excited to have my guest today, who is Jenny Clark. Jenny, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello. Thank you for having me on your podcast, Melody. I am a yoga teacher, a paddleboard instructor, soon to be children's book author, freelance marketer, do many, many things. But my main thing is I'm the founder of the Wild Times, and the Wild Times are nature-focused yoga and adventure retreats all across the UK and abroad. Yeah, and I very much love it, and it's become my whole personality at this point.
I'm excited to hear some more about some of those things, particularly. It's a very diverse range of things that you do, so it would be interesting to hear how some of those combine. So let's take you right back to the beginning. Now, what I've got on my list is poo picking as your first experience that you're going to talk about. So tell us a bit more about that.
So glamorous, such a nice way to start. So yeah, this was my first job when I was about 11. So when I was about 9, 10, I decided that I was horse mad, and I used to read I grew up in the New Forest, and I used to read the local paper and like circle all the horses and beg my mum for a horse. We couldn't afford a horse, sadly, at the time. So there was a job for someone to go and poo pick. So basically you pick up all the manure from the fields, we put it in old compost bags, so big bags, and then we'd sell them for 30p a bag, which went towards the cost of the horses. And they're still I drive past now, like 21 years later, and they're still 30p a bag, which is, I'm surprised that inflation hasn't hit the manure market.
That's an absolute bargain. I would definitely have horse manure for 30p a bag.
Yeah, well, and basically I went down there with my mum, and they said they wanted a girl who was 14 or older, but my mum sort of said, look, she's very sensible and mature, and she really loves horses, so please can she come and work here? So I used to, for 2-3 years, used to go down there 2 or 3 or 4 times a week after school and at the weekends, and put manure into bags in exchange for getting to ride the horses and learning about horses and doing a bit of dressage and bringing them on when they've just been broken in to, like, you know, when they're quite young, and then starting to ride them and things like that. So yeah.
It's like a proper barter economy, isn't it? You do some chores in exchange for something that you wanted.
Yeah. Yeah, it used to work that way. Well, I mean, it still does probably with like horse riding and stuff. You know, go and help out in exchange for getting to ride them if you're like a young, keen person. Yeah. Yeah, it was good.
And that gave you then like your first, is that, because that's very outdoors. You did some other things as well, didn't you, that were, again, quite outdoorsy, you know, and that clearly has carried on into your adulthood. So what else were you doing at that time or around that time?
Yeah, so my parents ran an outdoor activity centre in Northumberland when I was really young, and were both sort of windsurf instructors and, you know, water sports instructors. And my dad actually, he lives in Australia now, but he still takes kids on expeditions like all around the world. And yeah, I remember canoeing on the west coast of Scotland and camping on the sides of locks and things when I was young, and sort of being dragged winding up mountains in the rain in Wales, which is character building, and which now I really appreciate, And I went to Sea Scouts. So there was a Sea Scout a troop in the local village, and they were going to shut down because they didn't have enough sort of help and volunteers. And my mum said she'd get involved, but only if her daughter could come, because I was the first girl to go to Keyhaven Sea Scouts. And brownies at the time, I'm sure it's moved on a lot, and I think it has, brownies and guides, but brownies, all I seemed to be doing was like colouring in, and I wanted to be kayaking and sailing like all my friends at school, like the boys were. So yeah, I started going to Sea Scouts and did a lot of kayaking, a lot of sailing, a lot of running around the woods, camping trips, chopping wood with an axe, campfires, that sort of thing. And yeah, it's all pretty full. I think maybe you don't realize the impact of it because it's sort of normalized to you when you are young, but now I realize how formative those experiences have been, and how important it is, I think, to get kids outside at a really, from a young age if possible, and just literally, there's no right or wrong way to do it, just get outside.
Do you think, as well as the being outside and that influence on you, do you think there's other things you learned from those experiences, the poo picking and the being in the Sea Scouts, in terms of your personality or, things it gave you in that sense?
I think as well, being the first girl there and my mum being very involved in it, I think that it gave me an idea that I could do that and be in that space, and that it's not, it shouldn't be like a guys only space. So I think it sort of removed a barrier that is there, that I think maybe like quite a lot of girls or women can feel. So I think, yeah, that was important. But then also, yeah, I started just having jobs from a very young age. So there was the poo picking, but also I was a KP, kitchen porter, like washing up in a pub when I was about 13, and then waitressing and making cakes in a cafe in a castle from about 14. And I think all those things were very formative and just made me quite independent. Yeah, which was good.
Yeah, we were talking about that before we started recording, about how we both started working really young. I was 13 when I had my first job, and haven't stopped since. But I think you're right. It gives you a sense of, I think it makes you grow up for a start, because you've not got your parents around. You're kind of having to operate independently and be responsible. I think that's probably the thing I think that it probably taught me, and I see with my nieces and nephews, is it teaches them that they have to get somewhere on time and not call in sick and all of those things.
Yeah, I mean, well, my first job in the pub, the cafe castle was great, because I was working there with my best friend. We just used to listen to Radio 1, make cakes, eat a lot of raw cake mixture, make myself a tuna and cucumber baguette, and go sit up on the castle walls overlooking the sea and the Isle of Wight. And that was great. So I loved that. And we used to get a little ferry there with like all the food for the day, for making all the lunches. The pub wasn't as fun. I mean, I think I was paid like £4 something an hour for this summer, and it was every Sunday, but I only worked something like 4 and a bit hours. So I didn't even make £20. And it seemed to be that every Sunday it was so sunny and hot, and all my friends to the beach. And I had to get in, like, hoover the whole pub. And it was real old higgledy-piggledy. You have to move every single, old stool and everything to hoover it all, and then wash up all day in like a steamy hot kitchen, and run like prawn cocktails out to the garden for less than £20. So I really remember wishing that I was just at the beach on those days. But there's still worse jobs, aren't there? So yeah, it's definitely character building. And I think, yeah, I remember really having this thought that I don't want to have to say no to things because I can't afford them when I was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which I think I still sort of have that mindset. Maybe need to reevaluate my money mindset. But there was a real sense of, well, I want to work hard to have my own money so that I can afford to do the things that I want to do. And I don't want to have to say no to things because I can't afford them. So yeah, it was like a very sort of money equals freedom and independence thing, I think.
Yeah. Were your parents encouraging you to work, or was it mainly driven by you?
Yeah, I mean, they were, I think my brother also had jobs from quite a young age, but yeah, I can't, encouraging, yeah, but not like hugely pushing me. I just remember being like, well, I want to be able to do things and have money, so I'm going to go do it. You know, when you used to print off your little CV and then walk down the high street and go into every shop and
Yeah.
cafe with your CV. Yeah. And a lot of my friends had jobs as well. So yeah, and then all throughout uni and all the holidays and while I was at uni as well. A
Do
lot
you
of
think
hospitality.
Yes, and tell me about that. You mentioned hospitality. That was also my formative years. Was an awful lot of hospitality. I grew up in the Lake District, where it's all hospitality. Talk to me about waitressing. It's something we've both done. Tell me why you think it gives you some essential skills.
Yeah, I just think that everyone should have to be a waiter or a waitress at some point in their lives. I think, yeah, I was listening to a podcast ages ago, Graham Norton on a podcast. I think it was How to Fail with Elizabeth Day, but he was talking about how he thinks everyone should have to be a waiter or a waitress because it just does give you such an understanding of people. It gives you social skills. I was working properly as a waitress from 16, and you're constantly sort of managing, watching all the tables, making sure they're okay, but, you know, trying not to be too annoying, but also being there. So, yeah, I think it sort of teaches you how to read people and places, and it teaches you social skills. And also, I mean, you know, now my job is running retreats. So I run events, like a range of events and retreats, but you know, often I'm sort of keeping an eye out to make sure that, you know, like has everyone got water? Do we need coffee? Things like that, that actually some people just maybe don't see, but it's gives you like hosting skills, I suppose, and people skills. And I think it's very important. And it also gives you an appreciation of people who work in hospitality because you're on your feet, you know, like working in hospitality, you're on your feet all day. And sometimes people are not nice to you and it's a hard, important job. I actually miss it sometimes. Sometimes, or like working in a pub. Sometimes I think, oh, I'd quite like to just work in a pub, go to a cafe, just a bit. I actually worked in my friend's cafe for like sometimes in the summers over the last few years. And it's nice just to have that interaction with people, and you know, people come in for their like regular order and this coffee, and yeah, it's nice.
What is it you miss about it?
I think it's the social aspect of it and the sort of, I mean, the like camaraderie you have with the other people in the team. But I think that that is just a thing of being a solo founder. I luckily have this amazing girl, Maya, who's working for me a bit now, freelance, hopefully soon more, which has been really, really great to like have someone there to bounce ideas off and chat to. And I had a really good intern as well, and hopefully getting a couple more. But, you know, been a solo founder, and I've been freelance for sort of 6 years, and then started the Wild Times in 2020, properly started running retreats in 2021. It's now 3 years on from that, just on my sort of fourth summer or fourth season of retreats. Done about 50 so far. And just, yeah, being a founder can be really lonely. I created the company, I set it up because I love, hanging out with really nice people, being out in nature, teaching yoga, sitting around a campfire, floating around on the water, or like swimming, swimming waterfalls and stuff. And those are all the reasons that I created the business. And so when I'm on retreat, that's what I'm doing. But, the reality of having your own business, as you know, is just sort of like, well, often, I'm just at home, or maybe I'm working from somewhere else, but still you're by yourself, sort of staring at spreadsheets, like in your own head. And that can be, like, everyone goes, oh, it looks amazing. Like, it looks like it's smashing it with the wild times. And what does smashing it mean? Like, what is success? But I also think that it's important to talk about and acknowledge that just being a founder can be like really lonely at times, and it's not, as shiny as it might look on Instagram. So I think just having a team, just having people to work with. Sometimes I fantasize about working in a bar or just having an office job. The time that it really gets to me is at Christmas. Like the little match girl or something, where I'm standing outside with my nose pressed against the glass, watching people like tinkling laughter and clinking glasses at their like Christmas work party, and I'm like, woo, Christmas work party for me. It's like, might go get a coffee in a cafe. So yeah.
It's funny you say that. I was actually this morning I've got lots of friends who are self-employed, lots of self-employed consultants. And I was just thinking this morning about that we needed to have a Christmas party because I miss that too. I think it's interesting. I think what you're also talking about there is that if you're working in a bar or working in a restaurant, is that the responsibility is taken away from you as well. It's a very in the moment responsibility of making sure the people in front of you are okay, but you haven't got the rest of the worry about the business there as well. So it's a kind of, that's the one advantage of working for other people, isn't it? That the actual ultimate success of the business doesn't feel quite so much on your shoulders. Yeah, you can leave it there.
Yeah. And I've worked for like a lot of startups and a lot of small businesses, and I just now have so much more sympathy for previous bosses. Having my own business, knowing that that sort of being able to switch off from it, or giving yourself a break from it, or putting the business above everything and above your own health, and like burning yourself out and things like that. I'm so much more empathetic. Yeah.
I also laugh when lots of people say, oh, I'd love to have a little tea room when I'm older. And I always just go, ha! It's really hard work. And people have got this sort of idyllic idea that they'll just kind of mooch around and make a few scones and serve a few people, and they don't realise that. My brother owned a cafe.
They really retire on that money.
Yeah, exactly. My brother owned a cafe for 9 years. And, me and my other sisters, so all the family have worked for him in that time. And it was hard. I mean, it was successful, but it was hard going. And I just always think it's funny that people think that hospitality,
Yeah. I often have many business ideas of, oh, that would be lovely and that would be lovely. And then, my friend has a cafe and it's amazing, and it's always busy, and it's such a labor of love, and people love it, and she does the best sandwiches. But it's that when the fridge breaks or the sink's blocked, or and then you have to call in an engineer, and then you have to wait for them, or you have to go in at 6 a.m. to and go to somewhere to buy the bread because the bread hasn't turned up. It's all of that other stuff around it. Yeah, it's not so glamorous as just like making a couple of scones, is it?
No. Although I did used to enjoy making the scones for my brother's cafe. The scones and the soup. I used to really enjoy making those. I never make scones or soup now, but I enjoyed it at the time. So during this time, you've done a lot of waitressing, as you said. You also spent time in Monaco. You came across some people who had a lot of money. How did that influence your view on? You talked about your money mindset earlier. How did that influence your view on money
mindset? Yeah, so I used to work in this sort of bar restaurant that overlooked this marina, and so there were loads of boats. So I used to also work on boats as a hostess and a deckhand, and so you're tying all the ropes, putting all the fenders out, and anchoring off, taking the guests off to restaurants and stuff, or feeding them and hosting them and giving them drinks on board. And sort of through that, I got a few other jobs on boats for some people and some Russians. And yeah, I actually bought my first car when I was 17. I did a 3-day job on a boat, and I got paid £500 and I got a £150 tip. And then I think the next day I went and bought my first car, Martha the Micra, a little red 0.9 litre engine Micra. That was the love of my life. She's probably still going somewhere. She was a great car. So yeah, I did quite a lot of work on boats, but it sort of opened my eyes to this other world of the like the ultra rich. And yeah, at one point I ended up in Monaco going to I went to this apartment that was like one of the most expensive apartments in the world or something at that time. And yeah, just sort of really opened my eyes to money doesn't make you happy. And it felt quite, I suppose, maybe like grotesque and a bit like priorities were wrong. And this is not to say for everyone, but I think when you see that sort of level of opulence, I think I was about 18, but then hearing and knowing about some of the people and dynamics, and that actually they were very lonely and not happy despite having all of this money. Yeah, I mean, obviously money is an enabler, and it can massively impact your it can massively impact your happiness. I think there's like studies on it. If you have zero money to a certain level of comfort, I think, I can't remember, it was like $40,000 or something. So your basic needs are taken care of. So you have security and food, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And obviously that's going to massively impact your happiness. And if you're living in poverty or, with nothing, that's huge. But then there becomes like over a certain amount where it doesn't really impact your happiness. And so I think it's just an important thing to remember when you're looking at what am I working towards and what am I striving towards, and like, what do I want? What actually makes you happy? Years ago, I did this exercise when I was at this event, just writing down my dream day, or what my perfect day looks like in 5 years' time. Like, what would be my perfect day in 5 years' time? And I wrote it down. It was like, what are you wearing? What are you eating? Who are you with? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, for me, it would be having a picnic or a barbecue on the beach with my family and friends, bottle of wine, some crisps and dip. And writing it down sort of made me realize that, wait, I already have those days, and I can already have those days. And actually those days don't really cost you any money apart from cost of crisps and wine. So I think it's important to sort of sometimes step back and be like, wait, what am I working towards, or what am I doing? Not that there's any danger of me becoming a billionaire and buying somewhere in Monaco anytime soon. But I think, yeah, for all of us, like, money is an enabler, but it's not the be all and end all. And actually write down your perfect day, and it's probably going to be hanging out with the people that you love. And actually you hopefully could do that, pretty soon. And so that's good. Be sort of in the moment with that, and like grateful for that, rather than striving towards this thing that, maybe doesn't exist.
How do you balance that with, or balance is the wrong word, but how do you kind of think about that when you think of your business and how much you want to earn from your business, how much because there's you and I will both be in this world where you constantly hear people talking about, I have a 6-figure business, I have a 7-figure business, you can, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And, my view is you can you have to make a choice in terms of how much of your life you're willing to give up in order to achieve certain things. And I'm just curious as to your thoughts on kind of income, hard work, how much of your life you lose, etc.
Yeah. I do not have all the answers, and I think that work-life balance is some sort of myth made up by someone to make us feel bad. I don't know. It's that thing about, like, I think that you are juggling, everyone juggles a lot, and there's work and there's relationships and friendships and family and, exercise and all of these things that we're constantly all trying to like tick all the boxes and make sure that we've, I don't know, done all the things. And if you can find someone who does all those things, great. But like that's not me. And yeah, I don't know. I think maybe I should have more of a plan, but I sort of set up the business because I just thought, okay, how do I try and make money and make a living from doing what I love? What's that thing, like, do what you love and then you'll work every day in your life or something?
You'll never work a day in your life.
I think it's more that you work every day of your life. Because yeah, like I'm very happy that I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm very proud of myself and I really love it. But it's not easy. I think, yeah, what am I trying to say? I think that there's also a thing, like, I've noticed being in the sort of the London startup entrepreneur scene, which I'm sort of saying those all in inverted commas. There are people who see maybe a gap, like, these sort of tech. I'm really painting them with a broad brush here, but this is not what I mean I don't mean it in a bad way necessarily, but maybe they see a gap in the market and an opportunity, and then they're like, oh, I'm going to make XYZ, this platform or this app or this whatever, and I'm going to raise loads of money to do it. And tech, that sort of world, it can be very like boom and bust, or people see a gap and they think, I'm going to raise money, scale this thing, sell it for multi-millions and then retire. Whereas there's other businesses like me, or like, I don't know, someone who's set up a bakery because they love baking things or something like that, or a florist, or, there's loads of different things, but they just think, I love this thing, I'm good at this thing, and I want to try and make a living from it. And it's not necessarily that they're trying to create some sort of business that they want to scale and sell for millions. It's that they're trying to make a living doing what they love. So yeah, I haven't really, like, there's not like a long-term plan. I think hopefully I really ideally want to be doing this for a long time, and I really love it. But yeah, I mean, I've bootstrapped it by myself from nothing, from just putting my own very meager freelance marketing like money into it. I sort of properly started really when I was like locked down in COVID in Morocco, living in a van for 4 or 5 months. And when I was there, I was working sort of 2 days a week online for a couple of businesses doing marketing and social media, and partnerships and, branding and business development. And then the rest of the time I was teaching a bit of yoga online, but I actually had loads of time and space to think about, okay, what is it that I want to do and create? And living for very cheap out in Morocco in COVID in a campsite overlooking the Atlantic. So yeah, I sort of had more space and time to think about it, and which, is a real gift as well, because that was one good thing that came out of COVID, because I think, yeah, if I hadn't have had that time and space and less sort of financial pressure, I maybe wouldn't have been able to set this up. Yeah.
Tell us a bit about what you were doing before that. So you were in that kind of startup world, weren't you? You were in the startup life in East London is what I've got on the notes here. Tell us a bit about that, and that, because you got into marketing, that kind of thing.
Yes. I came out of uni with a history of art degree. Super vocational. Just because I really loved it. I loved history of art, and I got to live in Venice and live in Australia and stuff. So that was all good. And then I thought I was going to go to India and do yoga and become a yoga teacher. But then I sort of accidentally got a job in London. All my friends from uni were moving to London. I went to Warwick, and it really churns out lawyers and bankers and people working for the big four. So yeah, moved to London, got a job at a tech startup thing, which was very not me, and then left that and went to work for an organic skincare startup company in Hackney, and I loved it there. And I was there for a few years, and being there in Hackney Wick, like this was over 10 years ago now, so I was surrounded by other small businesses, people like brewing kombucha, brewing beer, roasting coffee, skincare. There's some guys making moonshine. There were just all of these. It was a real sort of hub of cool businesses, and these guys who'd brought this amazing barge over from, this really old barge over from Amsterdam, and they were building it and converting it into a restaurant. It's now called Barge East. It's great. And yeah, and at the time as well, I also started doing my yoga teacher training. And through that, I met some really amazing people. And there was just some real like expanders in my life. And by that, I mean, they just sort of showed me things that are possible that you can do that maybe before I'd not realized that you could just go and do. Like one of my friends, who was my yoga teacher, he just written a book and started a podcast and started this business and did that. And I was like, well, how did you do that? He's like, well, just did it. And someone else who just done films and documentaries because they just did it. And my other friend who'd set up an app and she's done loads of amazing things, Nicola. And, seeing that really made me realize that you just know, you don't have to wait for anyone to give you permission. You just go do it and you figure it out as you go along. I remember my old boss from the skincare brand saying, I mean, I think it's thrown around a lot, but that an entrepreneur is someone who jumps out of a plane and builds a parachute on the way down. And that's just always sort of stuck with me. And I do think that, I don't know, maybe you come out of uni thinking, oh, I've got this degree now, like, yay, someone will give me a job or whatever. But actually, you just got to do it, in the words of Nike. And you work out as you go along, and like, does anyone really know what they're doing? Yeah.
It sounds like quite an exciting time.
Yeah, it was. I was working pretty hard. I had loads of really good friends. I'd cycle everywhere around East London. Used to hang out. Yeah, all these loved all these little cool businesses. We were right on the canal in these cool old buildings above a brewery. Yeah, it was good. It was really fun.
And you developed your knowledge then of marketing, social media, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, that was, yeah. And also working for a startup and seeing that startup life is sort of all hands on deck, figure it out, and everyone's doing everything and helping each other out. Because, yeah, you might be there to be doing social media marketing, but you also might be labeling hundreds of lip balms and packing boxes and shipping out wholesale orders. And, I used to go to Whole Foods and Planet Organic and like meet the staff there and train them up on the products. And, I went to a festival and ran the wellbeing area for our brand. And yeah, talking to people there and helping develop this facials that we did. And yeah, like social media marketing. But again, I think I've also always had a bit of a thing where maybe a bit of imposter syndrome of feeling like no one's ever told me or shown me the right way or the correct way to do things. I've never worked for like a big company or a big corporate where there's like a, training program and they show you how to do these things. So I've always been a bit like, am I doing this right? But I think that also maybe in a way that's been quite good because I have seen that side of you just work it out and you just figure it out and you just, ask people and yeah. just do it. So yeah, which I have done.
And
So that's good.
you well, go back to as you were talking about, when you were in Morocco and when you were kind of coming up with your, during COVID, you would be what people would call a digital nomad. Was that how you would describe yourself?
Huh. Yeah, well, I have mixed feelings about the whole digital nomad thing, as I also have mixed feelings about the whole sort of like entrepreneur culture thing. I, so I went out to Morocco for 6 weeks to teach yoga and live out there. So I was living somewhere for free and I got free food and accommodation to teach yoga. And then I thought, well, that's good because it's quite a cheap place to be. And then I can work from here. And I was teaching yoga at a few different places. So I was doing that for 6 weeks. And then sort of COVID happened and I ended up staying and getting locked down out there and staying there for 4 or 5 months after that. But yeah, the digital nomad thing, I I think that it's the same. I mean, it's also about being freelance. I'm in some of these communities and these like Facebook groups and stuff that talk about being a digital nomad and how good it is. And even being, just being freelance, and people sort of glamorize these things and like, oh, it's so great. You can have freedom to do X, Y, Z. But actually it also means like no job security. People also, maybe they're living in other countries because they actually can't afford to live in, where they grew up now. So I've seen that as well. But also, I don't know, there's a bit of a backlash, against the digital nomad sort of thing. I mean, if you look at Bali, yeah, I'm not sure. I have mixed feelings about it. I think that also there's a part of maybe responsibility if you're going to these countries to like spend your money in a good way that benefits the local community and economy, and like not price them out because digital nomads are there. But also, I mean, you could say that for about a lot of traveling and tourism, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. I'm seeing a bit of backlash against it. It's not all it's
Do
cracked up
you
to be, is what I think.
think it's a young person's game? Yeah.
Being a digital nomad, well, I suppose in a way, because then you don't have any responsibilities. Maybe you don't have like a house or a family and things. But maybe you could be a digital nomad when you're older, for sure. I don't necessarily think it's a young person's game, but I think I just resent the
What's wrong with the term?
yeah. I don't know. I think maybe I spend too much time on Instagram for my business. So I see all this stuff and I see people being like, oh yeah, being a digital nomad's great. And it's the same with, I think it's just everything with social media, with being a freelancer, with being a digital nomad, with being an entrepreneur. There's a really funny account that's entrepreneur, but spelt wrong. It's like URE at the end. And it's these guys sort of taking the piss out of people who go on this podcast and they're like, I get up at 5 a.m. and I have a shake and then I do my, hour gratitude list and stuff. But I think that we're all sold this shiny version and like this is the option, and now be a transformational life coach or a holistic health coach or a 6-figure this coach, and I can teach you how to make 5-figure months, whatever. And I think a lot of it's bollocks, to be honest. Yeah, that's just how I feel. And
It's a lot of smoke and mirrors, isn't it? It's a lot of one of the things that always makes me laugh is all the people selling. So it's like, well, it's easy to selling because everybody wants to know how to sell. But do you know how to sell something that's not selling? Because it's like a snake that's eaten its own tail, to my mind. It's just self-perpetuating, but it's not, they don't necessarily know how to sell a sustainable business.
Yeah, it's like, I think everyone's looking for the answers and people show shiny versions of things. Even with retreats, people think, oh, retreats are an easy way to make money, so I'll do that. And from experience, it's not as easy as you think. But it's like everything in life, isn't it? And I suppose social media has created this sort of weird place where you only see the shiny bits of people's lives. And I try and remember that thing of like, don't compare your insides to other people's outsides, because, you only see people's shiny outsides on social media. But the reality is usually never as glamorous. But I think that's the thing that I think it capitalizes a bit of people feeling like they're maybe failing because they're not hitting 7-figure months and they don't live in Ibiza, and you see this shiny thing, and I just don't buy it all. I mean, of course, I believe that there are some people who are amazing and they're having best time and they're, traveling and doing all these things and making loads of money, like good for them. But I think that often it's a real hard slog. Yeah. Maybe there's no shortcuts. I don't know.
There's some various people I follow who, there's almost some mixed messaging as well. It's, I make all this money and I go and work from these exotic locations where I'm taking my family on holiday, and, and you can do this too. And then the next minute they're saying, but it's all really hard work and it's not all just, sunshine and roses. And then I'm thinking, really, they're working on holiday. Yes, they might be working from a sun lounger, but they're working on holiday and still working. It's not that you've found the secret formula to amazing success and not having to actually put the hard yards in. I think I'd probably rather work at home than be sat on a sun lounger and missing out when everyone else is down the beach. So yeah, it's a really interesting thing that we never used to have. We never used to see businesses and individuals in that way, did we? We never used to see the leaders of businesses on social media because social media didn't exist. And so, people were just there running their businesses rather than telling everybody else about and showing everybody else what they're doing and how they're doing it.
I think there's a thing as well about it's totally fine and okay if you just want to have a job that pays for your life and it enables you to do things and have hobbies and whatever and have a nice life and go on holidays. I think now that I suppose it's like the we work thing of like do what you love, and everyone wants to have a startup, but everyone wants to be a founder, and everyone wants to like millennials and Gen Z and stuff find like what they love and their purpose and everything. And great, that works for some people, but also it's okay if you just have a job that you like and then you have a nice life and you do other things. It's also not for everyone. I've been running this business for like 4 years, and during that time I've lived at home, I've lived with friends, I was living in a camper in Morocco. All those things have enabled me to set it up by making, I was making not really any money, putting everything back in the business, living off my, freelance job wage and teaching yoga and stuff, working like 3 or 4 jobs to enable me to like grow this business and set it up. And I think that's the thing as well. Like if you do want to have your own business and stuff, it's also being really patient, because I think the other thing we see a lot is this like, 0 to 60 million in 5 days, like 6 months or whatever. And, and that's the sort of stuff you see on, I don't know, podcasts and LinkedIn. And I won £10,000 last year in December. I won the She Means Business Awards with Tide Banking and Muddy Stilettos, and these lovely women from Tide were basically saying, they're a business bank, and they were saying, just it's being patient and having the like sticking power to just keep going, because so many businesses fail. Was it like 60-70% or something? But also, most don't make any money until they're like at least 4 or 5 years old. And I think even that is really good to know, because we do only see the, oh, I scaled and sold this and I exited this. Not necessarily, a lot of people are having more of this conversation and talking about the realities, I think. But yeah, I have a lot of friends who have their own businesses, and often it is like it's plugging away for years, so yeah, it can take a long time. It's like having the patience and the will and the actual want to stick with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We get these stories of overnight success, but sometimes it wasn't an overnight success. You just didn't see the other, 5 years that they'd put in beforehand. It's like people who become an overnight success as an actor, but actually they've been doing it forever. It's just no one had heard of them until they got, their breakthrough part. Tell me about the wild times. Tell me, you came up with this idea in Morocco. What's going on for you with it? How's it going?
Yeah, so I actually, with my friend Nicola, who's one of the very expander, it's not a word, expander people in my life, she was like, you can just set up a business for £12. You just register it on Company's House. I was like, oh no, I didn't know that. And so I had registered the business name in 2018, and then I didn't do anything. I sort of sat on it for a couple of years. And then in COVID times where I had more space, then I properly started working on, okay, what does this look like? And yeah, for me, it really came from trying to combine all of the things that I love doing. Like I said, being outside, being in nature, hugging trees, while swimming outside, campfires, good food, yoga, movement, rest, new experiences as well. And yeah, trying to make a living out of it. So yeah, I've done about 50 retreats now, I'd say. Pretty much all of them have been sold out. Had a whole feature in the Sunday Times last week, which was pretty cool. Yeah, it was just really exciting. And I've worked with some cool businesses as well, like Lucy and Yak, a sustainable clothing brand. I've done a retreat for them. I'm doing another one next month. And Soho House, I've done some workshops with them. And yeah, it's been it's really good as well to sort of stop and have a minute to realize that those are all big goals, getting in the Times and working with Lucy and Yak and people like that. Towards the end of every year, I sort of write a bit of a goal, vision, mind map and just, how much money would I like to make? Those are all sort of very if and ish numbers that we're not quite there yet, but, and who would I like to work with and where do I want to be? And, how many retreats do I want to do and what countries do I want to go to and things like that. And yeah, it's been really cool to work with some of those people and, be featured in the Guardian, the Times and stuff and the Independent and things like that. So yeah, and I love it. I truly, really love it. And I feel very happy and proud that I am doing something that I love and I do believe has a really positive impact on people. I really get to see it on the retreats. And it's really focused on rest and teaching people how to calm down. And often they arrive, apprehensive and they might have had a really long journey and they're all sort of fidgety and a bit what am I coming to? And then seeing the change in them after, just being in fresh air and physical exercise and doing some of the more, the slower types of yoga. We do yin yoga and yoga nidra and meditation and sound baths and, shifting down into the parasympathetic nervous system and slowing down. And yeah, seeing the transformation in them at the end is really, really lovely. And I also really encourage people to get out of their comfort zone as well. And so it's sort of focused on rest, but also adventure. And also whatever that looks like to them, it might be that just coming on the retreat is far enough out of their comfort zone and that's fine. Well done, you've ticked that box. Might be swimming in a waterfall. It might be, doing a 3-legged dog on a paddleboard, whatever it looks like to you. So yeah, and I think that being in nature is, and also, remembering that we are nature, but being in nature is the most healing thing for me. And, I've never felt worse after going for a walk, outside and looking at trees and looking at the sea and looking at horizons. And yeah, and it's really nice as well to see people when, when they're tired at the end of a day on a retreat, but it's that actual sort of physical fresh air. I've done loads of stuff tiredness rather than maybe like mentally wired and frazzled, which, often I think we can get from sitting inside working on screens and laptops, and when we're sort of overwhelmed but frazzled. The physical fresh air tiredness is a way better.
And so the people who come on your retreats, do they come on their own? Do they come with friends? What do most of your clients do?
A lot come by them. Yeah, a lot come by themselves. I'd say it really depends, but usually at least 50% come by themselves, if not more. It sort of varies retreat to retreat, but and you have like couples that come, mother-daughter, father-daughter, friends, sometimes groups of friends or just two friends. But yeah, a lot of people come by themselves, and for a lot of them, often it's the first thing they've ever done by themselves. And also it's really nice that I get people coming as a birthday present to themselves or that someone else has bought for them. So on my retreat in the Lake District last week, I had two women who were there as a sort of 60th birthday present. One, her sons had bought for her, and it was the first thing she'd done by herself. And the other had come with a friend. And so, got them a Colin the Caterpillar cake. We all wrote them a postcard and stuff and sang happy birthday. And that was really nice. But, and I also have a massive age range as well. I've had from teenagers up to 79. It's been currently my oldest guest. I had 3 ladies who were 75 last week. And that's also really nice to have this sort of big age and experience and, variety and like life variety, and it can create some really interesting conversations. And I think that's one of the things that people are surprised that they enjoyed so much, is meeting and having really interesting, nice, open chats with other people. Yeah.
One of the challenges that people I know who either run retreats or are thinking of running retreats have, and it very much goes back to the business side, is that there can be quite a substantial financial outlay before you've even got any clients booked on, because you're having to reserve accommodation. Venues have crushingly long cancellation policies often. What's your approach to thoughts on that?
What is my approach? I just think that I've never really thought too hard about these things, and I just basically like go for it, and I just then figure it out. I mean, I was pretty lucky in my first year that one of my venues, literally their deposit was something like £200, which is really unheard of. And so that was quite like, I guess, that took a bit of worry away about that. But I think I'm just not a very cautious person in that way. I just sort of like go for it and think, well, I'll figure it out, sort of thing. Some retreats I have made a loss. One I had to cancel because there was an earthquake in Morocco. I had to cancel it a few days before. And luckily, quite a few of the guests moved on to a later date with me. I had earlier this year. Some I refunded and stuff sorted out, but yeah, things like that do come up and happen. And then I lost money on that and lost all of that income I thought I was going to make. But also, there's been a natural disaster in our country, and then I've since been donating and working with some charities out there. But yeah, things happen, especially when you run events businesses. There can be many variables and all sorts of things. But yeah, I think I mean, also for the first couple of years, because I was not giving myself the pressure of taking any money out of the business, because I was living off my income from my other jobs, I just put everything back in. So, and I did have pretty big outlays at the start, like I had to buy all my paddle boards and all the paddleboarding equipment, all the buoyancy aids, and and then I've been sort of building up my kit and things, and all my yoga bolsters and mats and blankets and blocks. And, yeah, I should have
They're
really thought through the
really
bolsters
heavy
because they're
and
really heavy.
expensive.
But
Yes.
I have 20. Yeah. And I can carry 4 max at a time. And I live in a second floor flat in London. So I didn't really think that through for storage
And you
purposes
really
as well.
need
But,
them for yin yoga,
um,
don't you? I do
but
yin
yeah.
yoga. I love yin yoga, but yeah, a bolster is sort of essential with that.
Yeah, that's the thing. They do make such a difference. And I just thought it is worth it. It's worth it. So yeah, I do. I have a lot of kit, a lot of stuff in my van, and some more things that I would like to buy for business. But yeah, I think that I'm just maybe just not a very cautious person. I often just go with my gut feeling about things. And yeah, do I want to do that? Does that feel good? And then I just do it and figure it out. Yeah, which also is maybe not the best way of doing things in business. I'm actually going to try out this thing next year that maybe you've heard of, that apparently some people do, which is called making decisions based on financials. I know. Is this crazy
How very
concept
modern.
where yeah, apparently some people like look at the business and work out like what's making the most money, or and then they make decisions apparently based on that, and
Who
not
are
just
these
always their
strange
gut.
people?
It's so weird. I know, right? But yeah, but I mean, yeah, to be honest, like I've turned over a lot of money this year. And also that has made me laugh when people talk about, oh, I have a 6-figure turnover. And now I'm like, lol, that means nothing because it doesn't mean you're profitable. And yeah, I've sort of got to a point where I'm like, okay, I've been working on this for a while now. We're selling out. People can always tell me I need to put my prices up. So maybe that is something that I do need to do and look at. But I also don't want to price, it's a tough one because I don't want to price people out, and I don't just want to go for this real luxury high-end market. I quite like that some of the retreats are like more affordable. So I don't know, we'll see about that. One thing that I'm going to do and work on more is the team retreats, and so the wild teams, so like away days and corporate retreats. And also, which I'm really excited about, like having these away days in and around London, and also further afield, like manor houses in the Lake District, or like beautiful, there's a, stately home in the New Forest. And so it could be multi-day, it could be one day, and doing those with teams. And so that's a big like focus for next year, as well as still doing, some of our UK and abroad retreats in like Sweden, Italy, and Morocco. And then also the other sort of big project is the Wild Teens. And so it's using part of the money from the team away days stuff to fund the Wild Teens program, which is taking like disadvantaged inner city kids out into nature and giving them these same experiences, and getting out of your comfort zone, and rest and resilience and stress management and confidence and stuff. So yeah, it's all just a whole time, money, energy, resources thing of how many things I can do at once.
And tell me about
Yeah,
your
it's all
children's
building.
book. That's another what next thing for you, isn't it?
Children's book. Yeah. So I wrote this actually when I was in Morocco, and it's called Imagine a World. And I've actually got it printed out in front of me because I need to give them some feedback on it. But it should be coming out next March. And it's all about, I've just always had this thing about there are so many mad and amazing and beautiful things in nature, like, for example, the Northern Lights and volcanoes and bees making honey and jellyfish, and the fact that birds use like the like the magnetic field of the earth to navigate, and the stars and things like that. And that if you saw it on Avatar or like in a fantasy novel, all these things about earth, you'd think it was made up, but actually it's real, and like it's on our planet. And so the book is a nice children's book about that. And I have sort of plans to write more about similar sort of theme. But so that should be coming out next March. So hopefully I'll be doing some events like readings and seed bomb making workshops and children's yoga and stuff with kids. So if anyone knows any schools or children, I'm gonna be doing that. Hopefully, like doing
What's the
a bit of a
book
tour
called,
thing
did you say?
next March. Organizing.
Imagine a world.
Imagine
Beautiful.
a world.
And speaking of books, what books would you recommend to the listeners other than your own?
Other than my own. Oh God, so many books. I just recently read Matt Haig's new book,
No, but I
The
love
Life
him.
Impossible. Have you read it? I love him. I love him. He wrote Reasons to Stay Alive, literally, which is Reasons to Stay Alive when he was, when he had really bad depression. And I think it has saved people's lives,
I
and
love
then he
that.
wrote a beautiful one called The Midnight Library. Yeah. And he's just written one called The Life Impossible. And it shouldn't work because it's just mad. It's set in Ibiza. It's sort of magical. It's bonkers, but it's beautiful. I cried reading it. And I just think that it's it's just come out. I got sent the actual coolest thing that's ever happened is I got sent a signed preview copy. There's the coolest influencer thing that's ever happened to me. Not that I'm an influencer, and yeah, so I took it on my retreat and I gave it to a few guests to read after me as well. And it's just beautiful. The main character's a 72-year-old retired lady whose husband's died, who lives in a bungalow, who's quite lonely and volunteers in the charity shop. And she's just not the main character in books, but she's so many people. And what happens is amazing. And there's a real sense of like this letting go of guilt and shame of a lot of things in life that, happen to many people and that many people do. And you can hold on to for your whole life. And it was a real beautiful sort of letting go of that, and a real thing about being present as well to your life, and how actually if you're really in your life, he talks about having a glass of freshly squeezed orange juice and how it's the best. Well, the main character talks about it. It's the best, most delicious thing that she's ever had and that's ever happened to her, sort of thing. And talking about how if you're actually present in your life right at this moment, really taking in all your surroundings through all your senses, really in your body, really experiencing life like right now, how it is, really experiencing a glass of orange juice. It's amazing. And, how really being that present is better than any other like high or drug that you could do or take. And I think that's such an amazing thing to know and realize as well, that we're all, living in our heads, and we're all like reflecting or thinking we should be doing that, and we're not very present. And so yeah, it's a really good reminder, and I think that
sounds amazing. I would literally be buying that in the next 10 minutes. Second to last question, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Yeah, one thing that I have always loved, I think it was Eleanor Roosevelt said it, that no one can make you feel inferior without your permission. She said something like that. And I say that to my sister, and I say it to a lot of people actually. And I think it's really important because, you can walk into any room with any people, no matter how rich or famous or important or whatever they are, but no one can make you feel inferior unless you let them, basically. And yeah, you have control over that, and you have as much right to be there in that room as anyone else. And so I often try and tell myself that, just like put your shoulders back, take a deep breath,
and
walk.
Final question, what would be a title for your story?
Think something to do with making it up as you go along. Like nobody knows what they're doing. So just do it, basically. And it's a lot about like tenacity and audacity, I think. You have to be tenacious and just have sticking power and go for it. And also you have to have the audacity to say, I'm going to do this, and do it. And, not wait around for permission for anyone to say, oh, well done, congratulations, you're now this. Like, you just say, no, I am this, and then do it, and then you become it. Do you know what I mean? Like a self-fulfilling
I love
prophecy.
That. Tenacity and audacity. Very good. Thank you, Jenny. Really appreciate your time today. Loved your story. Very different to many of my other guests. You've had some really interesting experiences. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's been really great.
This was such a great chat with Jenny. I really enjoyed it, partly because we have a lot in common, and I'm also very interested and going to be running some retreats myself. So it was really fantastic to discuss the challenges and the joys and the pleasures of doing that with someone who's run 50 retreats themselves. So always nice to speak to someone who's several steps ahead of you from that perspective. But there was a couple of other things that I really enjoyed during the conversation in particular, and particularly the conversation that we had around being digital nomad and around entrepreneurship. And I love her questioning of digital nomads and really thinking about the impact that you have when you are living and working in another country, and the impact that you have on the local economy and affordability, for instance, for people within that economy. So I think she had a very healthy skepticism. But also I saw that skepticism when it came to entrepreneurship. And this is something that's come up plenty of times in this series and in many, many conversations that I have with other business owners, people who work for themselves, small businesses, large businesses, is that kind of falseness of, you only see what people are choosing to show on social media. And there's a lot of hubris and a lot of pretending that everything's great. And, this idea that we should be aspiring to constantly grow and have these big businesses and a 6-figure turnover, seven-figure turnover, whatever it is. And how actually just because you have a turnover doesn't actually even mean you're profitable. So you could have a business that's only turning over £50,000, but the profit is all going to you, or you could have a business that's turning over, £500,000, and it's not very profitable, and actually only a small percentage of that money is actually coming to you and into your pocket. So turnover and profit are two very different things, and people don't seem to talk about that or don't seem to recognize that in the world of entrepreneurship. And I think it's about time we all started being a little bit more honest. And whilst in many things I'm a believer in fake it till you make it, I think faking success, and particularly when you're giving the impression to others that if they just did the same as you, they'd have the same degree of success, is dishonest, really, and not something that I'm particularly keen on. And I don't really believe that organizations have to grow all of the time. We have this slightly derogatory term of a lifestyle business, and that's something that people look down on often. But actually for a lot of people, that's the kind of business that they want. They go into being an entrepreneur or running their own business because they don't want to be working every hour God sends. And yes, that might mean that they have a smaller business, but it's a more manageable business, and it allows you to choose what to do and balance your life and work and not completely burn out just from some kind of external pressure of needing to be seen to be earning a certain amount of money. A friend of mine said to me the other day, she had someone ask her, do you want a business or do you want to practice? And I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it when you're someone like myself who is in the coaching, leadership, consulting type of business. Do you want to be going out there and actually doing it for yourself? And that was the reason I left a big business, was so that I could actually get back out there and start working more directly with customers and with clients myself. And it's something that I'm deeply passionate about. It's why I went into the business in the first place. And working for myself has allowed me to really get that engagement and connection with my clients that was missing when I was in a more senior role, where it was about managing, it was about selling, and other people delivering. And I think to me, that's the difference between a business and a practice, maybe, is that a business is where you have other people doing the doing and you're managing it. And a practice is where you're doing it for yourself. So it's probably smaller, and you might use some associates and you might get others in to work with you. But the primary aim of your business is for you to be working in your business rather than maybe spending the majority of your time on your business. I saw someone the other day who said that they spend 80% of their time working on their business, on visibility, in getting clients, etc., etc. And that's just not for me. I don't want to be doing that. So I was really interested in what Jenny had to say and her views on that as well. And then the final thing that I really loved about Jenny was the fact that she just threw herself into things. You know, she really made me laugh when she was talking about just doing things and then actually, you know, thinking this year that she might actually make some decisions based on finances. But I've just loved hearing her, how she just taken advantage of opportunities. And I feel like that's been a real theme with all of the entrepreneurs that I have interviewed, is seeing an opportunity and going for it. So not being constrained by what their definition of their business is or constrained by self-image of what it is they should be doing, but actually trying different things and picking up skills along the way that ultimately can then lead them to a place of having the kind of business that they dream of. Now, my guest next week is Carol Driver. Carol is a PR expert and works with entrepreneurs, small businesses, to help them understand the world of PR. So she teaches you how to use PR and work with journalists and with mainstream media in order to promote your business. So if that is of interest to you, if you want to understand the dark art of public relations, then tune in next week. This podcast is brought to you by Liberare Consulting. If you enjoyed today's show, why not click on the subscribe button so you are among the first to hear about new episodes? And we would love for you to do us a favour and click on the share button and share this episode with one of your friends.